Oh, we're live.
All right.
All right. So would you like me to introduce everyone? Everybody come around and say what they do for a living?
That sounds great.
Hey, my name is Brian Funk. I'm an attorney up in Newark, and I'll be your moderator today. We've got some great panelists: Billy Scott, Tracy Chungling, Pete. I'm gonna pronounce your last name for me, Pete. Siliberto, and Kathy Burchak. And the only person I know on the call personally is Monica and Billy Scott. Billy Scott's a legend up here in Newcastle County, so that's they got me here to bring him under control. So, who wants to go first and introduce themselves? Billy, let's go with you.
All right, got it. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm not sure how accurate, but Billy Scott from Scott and Schumann. I'm a settlement attorney, do a fair amount of HOA work on some wills and trusts as well. Our main office is in Bethany Beach. We've got a satellite office in Rehoboth. We stay out of Bryan's neighborhood in Newcastle County, at least for now. And very interested to hear what everyone on this panel has to say. At the end of our rehearsal, I was mentioning that at SCORE, we had recently done, actually at my suggestion, a state of the market Zoom call. And I'm usually the first guy that runs away from that kind of call and thinks it's a complete waste of time. But it's been an interesting 2.5 years, and most of the things that I've personally predicted are wrong. So very interested to hear what your experience has been, particularly outside of Sussex County, and with the state of the market in the overall state of Delaware over the past 2.5 years. So, and appreciate the opportunity to address you all today.
See here. So next on my screen is Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Burchak. I'm an appraiser in the state of Delaware. I've been appraising since '93. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kathy. And Pete?
Sure. My name is Pete Siliberto with Real Estate Inspections. We're probably the largest real estate inspection firm in the region. We service all of the state of Delaware, northeastern Maryland, central southern New Jersey, and pretty much all of eastern Pennsylvania, up to the state of the New York border, all the way down through the shore areas. So that's who I am, and that's what we do.
Thanks, Pete. And then Tracy?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Tracy Chungling with Guaranteed Rate Mortgage, VP of Mortgage Lending, which essentially is just a fancy name for loan officer. My actual physical office is located in Newark, Delaware, so up in Newcastle County, but I obviously originate throughout the entire state, and I feel like I'm on the road more than I am in the actual office. So happy to be a part of this today. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. And then Monica.
Monica Hill, Realtor. Proud to be a Realtor. I've been a Realtor for 22 years with Remax Associates, and I am also the convention chair.
Well, thank you all. I don't think I left anybody out there. And do we want to take questions directly from the audience first, or should we just go into the questions that everybody submitted first?
Why don't you start with questions that we have, and then as we see some come up, we'll grab those. So anybody who is listening to us and wants to put some questions in chat, please do so.
Okay. All right. So let's go with Billy. Let's go first with the attorney questions. Can we settle electronically in Delaware?
No. The answer to that is no. We did have during the pandemic and the state of emergency, and the issue really with that is, Brian, as you know, there is a remote online notary statute in Delaware, but we haven't actually done the regulations to approve someone to actually be an online notary. We still have loan documents that need to be notarized. Most importantly, the mortgage has to be notarized in order for it to be recorded. So there was a time during the state of emergency was in place where the governor allowed notaries, if you were able to meet certain conditions, to be able to notarize something remotely. So not necessarily electronically, but you could notarize it remotely. But the person signing the document had to be physically located within the state of Delaware, which, at least for the beach areas, pretty much undid any usefulness with regards to that remote notarization of documents. So at least for my practice, once people found out they had to drive to Delaware anyway, they ended up driving all the way to the beach and did their walkthrough, and then settled in person with us. Brian, did you have opportunity to take advantage of that governor's order?
We tried. None of the lenders will allow it that we deal with for the residential stuff. They want a full-blown statute, not an executive order, blessed by the legislature. The only time we ever had luck with it in here was when, someone was sick. We would do a power of attorney to appoint a non-sick relative to come sign. And that was kind of the only times we used it. I kind of feel like it benefited the estate and trust section of the bar a little bit more than us.
And I will say, as I think about it, we did utilize it one time, but it wasn't in a real estate settlement. It was for an advanced medical directive for a woman who was in a nursing home. And they weren't allowing any visitors, but we wanted to make sure that she had her advanced medical directive or living will in place. So we utilized it once for a woman that was in a nursing home. But other than that, we did not utilize it at all in a real estate settlement. We did do a lot of other creative things, like go via Zoom. At least I would be in my office, and then clients would be in the conference room. We bought a picnic table that we put out front. And if the weather cooperated, we would settle outside. We bought a couple of TV trays, and some people signed things in their cars on, with a backer to be able to sign. And we witnessed with the windows down just in case, so that we weren't transmitting anything. So we got fairly creative in getting it all done, but didn't really get a chance to do any of the electronic type stuff. And I know I'm actually on the committee with regards to the remote online notarization, but there's a federal statute that's winding its way through that I think will end up getting on the books before we get something on the books in Delaware. We would probably, draft off of what they had in place anyway for the most part. So the really long answer to that is no, not right now, maybe coming soon.
That's a good answer. All right, so next question is for our lender, Tracy. How important is it to have clients pre-approved prior to taking them to see homes?
So extremely important. One, you want to know your client's buying power, right? You don't want to spin your wheels, taking them out, showing them homes that they may not even be fully pre-approved for, especially in this market. Obviously, we're still very much in a seller's market. And when I say pre-approved, I mean fully pre-approved by their lender, meaning that all financial documentations have been vetted, right? Difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. So it's really important because your time is valuable, right? You want to build the rapport and you want to get to know that family, but you also need to have them pre-approved because offers are coming in so fast. There's no time to wait for them to leave that house, go call a lender, shop around, whatever they might be doing. I think it's also really important too for them to know that they've got a strong team. So when you've got an agent up front that's really educating them on the process and letting them know how important it is to be pre-approved, I just think they have a stronger chance in this market, honestly.
Thank you, Tracy. And then for our home inspector, you want to describe what a home inspection is and what it is not?
Sure, Brian, that's a great question. So a home inspection, the technical, if you want definition, is a home inspection is a limited, that means not technically exhaustive, visual inspection of the home systems and components of any structure or dwelling. Break that down. A home inspection, the critical thing to understand is that we're not going in there, we're not spending it's not a technically exhaustive inspection. We're not going to spend actually hours, days, weeks, months. If we're going to do a technically exhaustive inspection of any given dwelling, it literally would take a very, very long time. We have a very limited amount of time. We're in there, on average, typical inspection runs about 3 hours. And so people need to understand, and both agents and clients need to understand, that a home inspection is very limited in nature. We're looking at a lot of things in a very, very short amount of time. And it's really important that agents set their clients up for success when it comes to the transactions with regards to setting expectations. We spend a lot of time, I teach C classes to agents all the time, and we spend a lot of time and effort making sure that agents understand that we need to have people's expectations in alignment with reality to what a home inspection is. And so sometimes people come in and think, well, I'm going to get a home inspection, and once that's done, everything goes good. It's either going to be a pass or fail. Well, it's not pass or fail. We're just simply observing and looking at what we see, forming an opinions about what we see, doing so in accordance with the standards of practice that's nationally recognized. And so we're looking at a lot of things in a short amount of time, forming an opinion on that, and that's what we provide in a form of a report to the client, the end user. So really important, particularly for agents, to set those expectations early on. When you're riding around with a client, showing them homes, it's a good idea to talk about, hey, at one point we're going to put an offer in. We're going to say that, hey, this is the one. Let's put an offer in on this one, and we're going to get a home inspection. Good idea that they have a pretty good understanding of what that home inspection is all about. A good way to find that out is to read the home inspection agreement, which I find that a lot of people don't do. We have a couple of attorneys on here. I'm sure you would recommend that people read agreements before they sign them. It's my experience that people don't do that. And the other thing is it's really easy to go online and get a copy of the nationally recognized standards of practice for home inspection. And that does a really good job of breaking down what a home inspection is. If you're an agent and you've never looked at that, it's a super easy read. Takes you a few minutes to go through. The gaps between all the paragraphs are real big, and just breaks down and shows you what a home inspection is and what it is not. But in summary, it's a limited inspection, visual only, not technically exhaustive, looking at a lot of things in a short amount of time.
Thank you, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And then a question for Monica, our realtor. Monica, what made you want to become a realtor, and is everything you expected it to be?
Oh my gosh. I'll be real honest. I was, at the time I became a realtor, I was a single mother of 2 young daughters, and I wanted a career that gave me flexibility. I think real estate is a tough mistress. I think she commands your time. And so in looking back, I think it's good for people to get good mentors early on in this business, to learn about balancing your time, to learn about your finances, and be careful with your communication. Keeping communication lines open with your co-broke, with all parties to the transaction, and especially with your clients is crucial.
Monica, how often are you seeing buyers waiving home inspections?
Quite regularly this last year, they're either waiving home inspections or they are saying they'll waive up to a certain dollar amount. So part of that would be really good to talk to their attorney before we put that language into Section 32 on the agreement of sale. Because if you're going to waive up to $2,000 on that, does that mean singular and defect? Does that mean total? Does that mean if a singular thing comes in that's $9,000 that you now get to renegotiate all of that? It's fraught with error when we put language into that section and don't really look at the full ramification of it.
I'm gonna throw a follow up there to you. I'm gonna throw it back at you, Billy, on this one. How much buyer's remorse have you seen in the past year where people waive inspections and come back to your office unhappy that they waived inspections?
It is not uncommon. The worst one that I've run into over the past probably 2 years turned out that there were severe structural problems with the foundation. So it was a smaller house on a nice lot in a nice neighborhood near me, actually. And I actually made the comment to the buyers at the settlement table. I said, boy, if I knew that house was going for that amount of money, I might have looked at that house. But they waived home inspection. Mr. Buyer was a contractor, but not a foundation guy necessarily. And when they got in there and were looking to make some improvements, what they thought were more cosmetic improvements to the property, they found some really big problems. We talked about this, so if anybody attended the SCORE where we did this same kind of panel, waiving home inspection is a really dangerous situation. I find, too, that particularly some of the newer realtors or buyers or sellers don't understand what waiving home inspection means. To me, waiving home inspection doesn't mean you don't do a home inspection. To me, waiving home inspection says I'm waiving the right to require the seller to make corrections to the property. But in no way would I ever recommend that a buyer not actually ever do an inspection whatsoever and then take their chances as to what they were buying. I think particularly in this market, at least in the beach areas, people are trying to make their offer as attractive as possible. So they're waiving mortgage contingencies, or worse, at least in my opinion, writing the word cash in there, as opposed to just saying no mortgage contingency. They're waiving home inspection, which means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and then trying to make their offer as attractive as possible. So again, for me, I would say you're having a home inspection. If it uncovers anything that you don't like as the buyer, then you can terminate, get your deposit back, and move on. But you're not obligating the seller contractually, and they're not anyway in the contract, the way the realtor contract is written. But you're not obligating the seller to come back with any sort of offer. You can just sort of take it or leave it. But the idea that people would waive the inspection completely and never do one is really scary to me. And I think it really has to be, for me, it wouldn't be worth it. I can't think of a piece of property that I would have to have that I would be willing to waive home inspections and take that kind of risk.
Let me jump in on that one, though, too. When you receive an offer as a listing agent that says they're going to waive the home inspection, and then you get a call the next week that they want to set up their home inspection, it's not the way to approach it. So they need to make sure they're very clear with the way that they're doing this at the beginning of it, or they alienate the seller from the transaction. Because part of the beauty for the seller was you gave me an offer that wasn't contingent on an inspection, and I know I have a clear path ahead. So even if you say it's not contingent on it, but I'm going to do one, and then it gives me the right to walk away, that buyer is now made weaker than somebody else potentially who made a competing offer.
Yeah, no doubt. What I have found, and I guess when Brian and I get involved, it's when there's a problem, right? When it all goes smoothly, we don't know about it. It just comes to the table and we're good. Yeah. Realtors will write in for informational purposes only. But that doesn't, I don't know what that means. I don't know. When you write that in, I don't know if you're entitling yourself to have one, but it's just for your own information. You have no rights to terminate and get your money back. I think people have to, most important, as you said, Monica, is to be really clear when you're filling out Section 32, if it's something beyond the tested language that's in the contract. When you're throwing in these sort of terms that you hear other people use, I have found anyway, and again, we get the problems, that people aren't as clear that if this, then what? There's a lot of if this, but they don't necessarily spell out then what happens if this should arise.
Can I just add something in, actually kind of to piggyback off of both Billy and Monica? One of the things that we see on the lender side with these verbiages is that we have buyers sometimes coming back to us saying, I didn't understand exactly what this meant in my contract. Is there a way that you can get me out of this now so I can get my EMD back? I see that a ton of time. And obviously, as you all know, we don't get copies of the inspection report, so please don't ever send them to your lender. But buyers come back to us because they have that rapport with us, and they don't understand the verbiage sometimes up front that agents are, putting in these contracts. So they're thinking they've got this great offer, but the $2,500 point, maybe to Monica's point that she made, is that a singular item or is that $2,500 cumulative? Buyers don't know that. And when, they do the inspections and they get the report, they obviously get nervous, right? There's always some things on there, and they don't understand that. So then they're trying to find ways to get out of it because they didn't understand what they were signing. So I would definitely say for agents as well, just make sure you're being very clear with that language when explaining to buyers, because I have seen a ton come back to me and just say, how can I get out of this? Can you help me get out of this? Is there some way that, you can get me out of this contract? And it's not the case, so.
Following back from that, Billy, I don't know if you can see the chat room real quick here. They've got a question, a follow-up from Denise. It says, how should it be worded when you're doing an inspection for informational purposes only, but does not want the seller to make repairs? How would you recommend that?
Well, I think I did see that question. I think it's a matter of talking with your buyer and determining from worst case scenario, what do they want? So if it's truly for informational purposes only, meaning your buyer has the right to do a home inspection, but they still have to go through with the purchase, what are we really accomplishing other than knowing that everything is clear or not, but you still have to move forward? So, again, for me, I would say to my buyer, if they approached me at that point in the transaction, that we have the right to do a home inspection, and that if I'm unhappy with it for any reason, I can terminate the contract and get my money back, and get the home inspection done as quickly as you can, so that seller's not off the market, and make your offer stronger in other ways other than buying a pig in a poke. So I would, when it's truly for informational purposes only, I think you just put in there that you have the right to do a home inspection, so that the seller understands that. But I think it's more important. This is the if this happens, then what? The next conversation you have to have with your buyer is, well, let's just pretend for the moment that something really bad pops up in that home inspection. Then what? Are you buying it anyway, no matter what it says? Because if we say for informational purposes only, that's what we're setting ourselves up for. And then if they're clear that they want to do that, as someone else said in here, I'd be really careful and get the sign off from the buyer. But for me, even in a really hot market, that is a very suspect way of moving forward, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Our next question here is for Tracy. Why would you recommend working with a local lender as opposed to one that you'll never see across the world at 1-800-GET-MORTGAGE.com, where they don't close on time?
Great.
It's a long question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Great question, though. So several reasons, right? It's great to have someone that you can actually get in contact with a direct cell phone number. You're not calling an 800 line. You're not bounced around. You have one dedicated loan officer from start to finish, and you should hopefully have a dedicated team from their operations side. It just makes the process that much smoother. Also really important if your clients want to sit down with them, right? Obviously, COVID restrictions have lifted a little bit, and we're seeing more families that actually want to come in the office and have face-to-face conversations. I do a lot where I go down to some of my builders that I work with and sit down when the families are writing contracts, right, to kind of help them walk them through the verbiage and sit with the sales associate. So that's important too, because it just shows that strength in the teamwork, right? The agent and the lender together partnering and being visible for that family. Also, right now, it's key knowledge in the local market, right? Understanding what's going on in our specific market. And I think it's really key to reputation, right? So a local lender is going to have a little bit more respect in the community, hopefully, as long as the reputation is good. And they're going to know some of the agents on the other side. So if you have a family you're working with and you're the buyer's agent and you have a local lender that may know the listing agent. So when you present that offer, that listing agent may say, hey, I worked with Tracy at Guaranteed Rate and it went fairly smooth. I think this is one to consider, right? So there's a trust factor there too with a local lender.
All right. And then for Kathy, would you like to explain the appraisal process for us, and how does that work with different lenders, different types of loans?
So when I get called in, it's typically for a walkthrough appraisal, but when any time that a lender or a bank is investing in a property, they want to know how much it's worth. Their money is backing the loan and they want to know the value of the property. So I would walk through the property, take into consideration the location, the amenities, and all the highlights of the house that would contribute to value. And then I would create from all the data from the MLS and local sources, a report that sums up the market, highlights the current situation that we're in, and choose comparables that have sold most recently and most similarly, and compare them to our subject, and come up with a value for the property. So it's a long report. If anybody's seen them, they are form type report with different samples of maps and things like that, and pictures of the houses. But basically, we're summing up the value of the house and how it compares to other sales in the neighborhood.
Can I ask a question then with Kathy? So I'm a listing agent. I'm going to prepare a property, and I've gone over pricing with my sellers. What would you suggest listing agents do to help them look accurately at value? What sources should they use, and how do you question the integrity of some of those sources?
The MLS is the go-to source, but of course, people are also listing things, with off market, for sale by owner, and things like that. But basically, the pictures and the information that other realtors list in their multi-list is a very, very relied upon information source, along with verifying that all through the tax records and county assessment. So if you were listing it, I would first go to your surrounding neighborhood and see what's sold, see what's on the market, your competition, and see where they're going, if they're pending and they're asking prices, what they're getting over or under asking price, and how your house compares to them in amenities, bedrooms, bathrooms, basements, garages, decks, porches. And then you go to us, is your house renovated, updated, original? How does it show?
And you and I have always have talked in the past
base
about
that on what those houses have sold for.
Okay. Then you and I have looked in the past at the Newcastle County records, using Newcastle County as an example, and looking at the building footprint and the accuracy of information there too. Or lack thereof.
The county, the only thing that I really have unfortunately the county hasn't assessed in years, and it's not always the most accurate, and they've been including a lot of the square footages of the basement, which I don't think they should. They should, pull that out and make that a separate living area. If they want to say that it's living area, that it's basement area, that's fine. But they've been adding it into the square footage that gets reported into the multi-list that automatically, pulls that information out. And it's not always the most accurate, but if you know your market, which most realtors do know where they get most of their listings, and if an appraiser has been around long enough, they know the nuances of every neighborhood. If it's Heritage Park and it's a bi-level, the county reports it this way because there's 4 different levels. If it's say Middletown, they include all the basements that's finished into the county record. So you just have to know your market and know how the county is reporting that market and how reliable. the city, I mean, that information on a 100-year-old house might be 40 years old because of the last assessment, or more than 40. Last assessment was in 86. But I guess a new one's coming.
Kathy, I see a great audience question there that I'm going to throw in from Sue. Are drive-by appraisals valid?
Yes, they are. I mean, they are. That is the lender's choice, based on their comfort with either the values in the neighborhood or the buyer's credit score or how much they're putting down. That's their choice. It could be a desktop appraisal. The Fannie Mae has been mining our data on appraisals for years, and I can see in my software what other peers are listing as these other sales. So they're also using that information. So if I've got XYZ, sale, they can do a drive-by on it. If it's a condo, the footprint's going to be the same. It's just the amenities are going to be different, maybe on the inside and the finishes, but there's a pretty tight range there because you're not changing the footprint. It's always going to have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and a dining room and living room. So they can do a drive-by. They can do a desktop. But an appraisal is, coming up with a value. They can either do it, virtually, drive by it, walk through it. But it's the appraisal part is the valuation and not necessarily, how you get the information. But once you have the information, you form an opinion.
Thank you, Kathy. And then, Pete, if you don't mind, would you mind kind of going into your home inspection process? And do you recommend your buyers come with you?
Sure. That's a great question. So home inspection process, basically we show up at an inspection. We're going to figure that we have about a 3-hour window to go through and look at approximately 500 to 600, maybe even 700 different systems and components that are related to that dwelling. And so we start that process. I'll introduce myself, and I really do invite the buyer and the buyer's agent to actually tag along. And I really like when they do. I really encourage them to do so because I want them to be able to see what I'm seeing, and also I want them to see how I react to what I'm seeing. So, for example, I'll go through, and the first thing I typically do is I'm going to inspect the exterior, the site conditions, the structure, the roof, and then we're going to go into the basement, look at the mechanical systems, the structure elements that are exposed there. That's kind of called the heartbeat of the structure, if you will. And then we're going to go through the house, going room by room. And what I want them to see when I'm going through that process is that if I find something, for example, I don't like to wait to the end of the inspection to actually say, hey guys, come on and let's talk about what we saw, 3 hours into this thing. I actually like to bring them, and so number one, to have them along when I actually find things. And number two, even if they don't follow me, I'll go back and get them and say, guys, I'm just wrapping up the outside. Here's what I found. And I want them to see that, because if all they do is read my report, and let's say that, hey, I find something that might be a little scary if I have to type it up, because when I type up what I see and describe what I see, I'm giving you a description of it, a location of where the issue is, the implication and the recommendation. I want you to understand exactly what we have going on here. But if I just show you what if you just read what I write in a report, you're not going to get a sense of what my opinion of that issue is. And so even though it might sound scary when we're in a report, I want people to understand that while I'm showing you what this issue is, that, hey, I'm not afraid of it. Even if it is, we gave an example earlier, more of a significant structural issue, foundation issues. I want people to understand. I can't put into a report that I think that if it can be built, it can be fixed. If we can walk through this process, and that's an inspector's job, is to, hey, guys, we have an issue here. Here's what the path forward is. So yes, maybe we need to get a structural engineer to develop a prescription for remedial action. But by having them with me, what I can do is say, but here's what I think that they're going to do. Typically what we've seen is that, we have a crack in the foundation, and maybe that crack looks scary to you. But this is why the crack's happening, guys. We're not doing a good job of maintaining the exterior water that comes off of the structure. and we're super saturating the soil. And that's why the foundation, it has exceeded its horizontal, the capacity to hold back this horizontal load. We've got this crack starting to develop here. And so what we need to do is we need to stabilize this. And so I can go through it. I can't put all that into a narrative in a report. So that's why I really like people to be there with me. We do our job. A good inspector, like I said, we're looking at a lot of things in a really short amount of time and forming an opinion on all of those things. And we're not giving you a pass fail, but what we are giving you is a path forward when solutions, when problems come up. We're giving you a path forward to a solution, and we should be doing that. Good inspectors should be doing that with a lot of humility. We're not code enforcement officers. We haven't been given authority. We don't have badges or anything like that. But it's a privilege to be able to go into somebody else's house and do what we do, provide the information that we do for our clients. So, when it comes to walking through that process, it should be done with a lot of humility. And so we're not going to guarantee that we found everything. I give you an example of something that just came up in a house that we inspected in Wilmington about 1.5 years ago. The people, we went through, we did the inspection, we called some issues out. Particularly, we called some issues out with a front porch. It was a brick structure, and there was a front porch there. And when we got all said and done, we gave them the report. And we said, guys, you really want to get this looked at the front porch. There was some significant settling and some structural issues with the front porch. And what ended up happening is they ended up not doing anything with their recommendation. 1.5 years later, they found that the raccoon had found a hole and was going up into that front porch. And they had a contractor come out and start to take things apart. And when they took it apart, they found that they had a bunch of charred framing material up there, and that's not something that we could see during the inspection. So they came back to us and wanted to know what can we do for them, and we had to explain to them that that's not something that we could have ever even seen during an inspection. So really important that people understand what we can do, what we can't do. We don't have X-ray vision, but one of the things that we do quite frequently is particularly now as we move through time, we're using a lot more technology with the inspections. Yes, the inspection is a limited inspection, visual only, but we do have technology that we rely on, things like thermal imaging cameras, surface moisture testers, really, really focusing on, potential intrusion from unwanted sources. So it's kind of what the home inspection process is all about. So, but I really do. I can't say enough about buyers agents being there, buyers being there, so we can walk and talk with them. Not a big fan of sellers. I don't care if the seller's agent is there during an inspection, but I will just give you this little tidbit of information. Buyers get really sketchy, and when there is a listing agent there, or even the seller's there, they want to know why they're there. I get them all the time. They say, "Hey, is that normal? Are they supposed to be there? Do they not want us to find something?" Inspection day should be a day of transparency, clarity, and visibility. The people are never going to get a better look at the biggest investment that they're ever going to make. So having that time to walk through there, learn about the property, learn how best to maintain it is the biggest thing as far as I'm concerned. It's a day where they can be edified and learn a lot about it. And that's the way I approach it. It's a day to really teach that client about that house. Last thing we want to do is scare anybody and away from moving forward with a transaction. That's not what we're about. So it's the way we approach it.
Thank you, Pete. Let's see here. So let's see. Monica, would you mind telling us what the Delaware Association of Realtors and the local associations can do for agents and how they can help their business?
Wow. When I first got started in the business 22 years ago, John Ford was a selling partner with me at that point. He's now my broker. And John said one of the best ways to get involved in your business, to learn more about it, was to volunteer with the board. So I joined the Public Policy Committee. I'm still on it 22 years later. You learn about your business, what happens behind the scenes. Through the Delaware Association of Realtors and the Newcastle County Board or Sussex County Board or Kent County Board, you get a voice in the things that impact our business. For example, it was some years ago, somebody in the state and the legislature must have heard that a higher level of radon is associated with cancer. And so they wanted to pass a law that said that all sellers had to test their property 1 year in advance for radon. And as realtors, because we had our finger on the pulse of things happening there, we said, who knows a year in advance that they're going to sell their house? And number two, you don't want the seller testing for that. I could go to Home Depot and pick up a little home testing kit, a radon testing kit. You want to make the buyer aware of what their rights are and then let them utilize a professional to do the testing of their house and then make their decisions based upon that. So it's involvement behind the scenes. It's where you get more knowledge about the business and where our membership in a board level, whether it's on the local board or the state, helps all of us to do better in our business and to protect the rights of our clients.
Thank you, Monica. Let's see, next question here is for Kathy. And how do you feel, Kathy, about when you receive comparables and other information directly from sellers and realtors involved? How does that make you feel?
I like it. It helps me figure out what they're thinking, and then if I can use these listings, I will put them in the report, regardless of whether they become a comparable or whether they, I will list them as, properties and addresses that I didn't use and why I didn't use them. Because in the end, lenders run my reports through basically a desktop underwriter, and it will also give comparables of what they thought would have been good properties to use. And it's good that we address them all because they're going to come up anyway, of why we use them or why we didn't use them as comparables for our subject and our sale. So I like it. Everybody's welcome to email me them or meet me at the properties and send them to me. Perfectly fine with me. It just helps. It just gives me a good start.
Thank you, Kathy. And then next question is for Tracy, our lender. Tracy, what advice would you give to buyers to avoid losing out on contracts when they're competing with cash buyers? Any advice you could give us there?
So the biggest piece of advice that I'm giving right now in general is patience in the market. That's probably the biggest thing that I can say. Ensuring that you have a strong team, so your agent and your lender are working together to make sure that you have the education throughout the process. Really working and honing in on credit and assets and really making sure that you have the strong offer when you submit it. And the reason I say that is because it's very tough to go up against a cash offer. However, cash offers do fall through, and sometimes those buyers back out. So you still want to be in the running. You still want to be as strong as you possibly can with your offer to be able to be next in line should that offer fall through. But honestly, patience is really key in this market right now. And that's probably my biggest piece of advice. And again, going back to the team, making sure that everybody's keeping these families engaged, making sure they have the knowledge on where the market's going, why there's so many cash buyers, because it can get frustrating.
Thank you, Tracy. And next question is for Billy. What is owner's title insurance? Is it necessary? And will you even represent someone if they refuse to get it?
The answer to the last part of that is yes. Owner's title insurance is completely optional. I have heard a couple of attorneys, I don't know what, Brian, you guys do. I have heard a couple of attorneys that will refuse to represent a buyer if they won't take out the owner's title insurance. Title insurance is just that. It's insurance that you have good title to the property. There's inclusions and exclusions to what that is. And Brian, I'm sure you run into this question as well. If you do a title search, why do I need a title insurance policy? Because you searched the title. So unless you screwed up, then title should be good. And I don't need title insurance. A couple things there. One is there's many things that aren't revealed in a title search that could affect title. So, for instance, one of the sellers or buyers in the chain of title could have been going under bankruptcy at the time. I've actually had this happen where we had a seller come to the table and we searched and they were in an active bankruptcy. We had another issue where there was a seller that was under a guardianship proceeding. So there's things that if you do a title search won't necessarily be uncovered. Another one could be the effectiveness of a power of attorney that could have been void at the time that it was used, because a power of attorney expires when the person that gives the power of attorney passes away. So there could be a deed or other conveyance documents that were signed by someone who, legitimately or not, thought they still held the power under that power of attorney, and then it turns out that they did not. Biggest issue that we see in Sussex County has to do with estates and whether or not estates were closed out the right way, whether or not the right number of or the right beneficiaries were notified, or a sheriff's sale, same thing. God forbid, not all the creditors were informed, something like that. So there are many instances, or you could also have a forged deed, something like that. But there's many instances that wouldn't be readily apparent from a title search or review of a title search, where the attorney didn't commit malpractice by missing it, but you still could suffer a loss. I also say to people, the reason that, $2,000 worth of title insurance will protect, $400,000 worth of your purchase for the rest of your life while you own the property is because we don't expect there to be claims. So the reason that it's only $2,000 once and not every year, like your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance or your health insurance, is that unlike other types of insurance, title insurance has a very small number of claims, but God forbid, when there is a claim, it's usually what's called a total loss, meaning you could have a total failure of title. So the title insurance, if God forbid that this claim came up, would buy you an attorney to fight it out, buy you the ability with the title insurance carrier to be able to settle that claim. But essentially, without it, you're self-insuring. And I tell people that even on my own properties where I'm the person that reviewed the title search, I buy it because for me, it's penny wise and pound foolish. It's something you buy praying you never, ever have to use, but it's there, kind of like your homeowner's insurance. So again, the reason it's relatively reasonable is because we do not expect there to be a claim, period.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And let's go to our next question here. We have Pete. You want to tell us about? Do you recommend home inspection for new construction homes, and how often do you get the builders fighting back on that?
Oh, that's a really good question. Definitely recommend it. Now, let me explain why we recommend it. First, when, as people know, as homes are being built, they're going through code enforcement inspections. But these code enforcement inspections, while they're very good inspections, they are limited in scope. They're really just looking to meet minimal requirements. Does the foundation comply with code? Does the framing look like it was done well? And the mechanical systems, where they roughed in and do the final walkthrough, do we have the basic life and safety issues that we're looking to have? Nobody's really looking to see, are all these systems and components being systematically integrated in such a way that we're going to not have materially defective conditions built into the property. And what we find doing new construction inspections is that, yes, they're imperfect homes being built by human beings who are imperfect. And yes, sometimes mistakes are made. I got to say, builders are doing a fantastic job. Modern building science is moving us along, and builders are implementing things, and they're always looking to do things better and better. But we still find that there are issues that pop up, and so we generally do a foundation inspection. But the pre-drywall inspection, we typically come in right when the roof is, the structure's been framed up, the roof has been put on, the windows and doors are in. The day that the insulators are just showing up to start doing their foam sealing and caulking, is when we recommend that we be there for a pre-drywall inspection. And it's such a great inspection because we're really looking at that. We're looking at the systematic integration of these things. Give you one example. The building envelope. The building envelope is really the most important. It's in my mind, number one rule. I tell my clients all the time, first commandment of every structure is thou shalt not leak, right? So we put a roof on, but we want to make sure that there's other areas where water can get in that it's not going to be able to get in. Well, preparing that building envelope, the house wrap, the integration of the windows and doors as they integrate with that house wrap, putting pan flashing, sill flashing under the windows and doors before we put those windows and doors in, making sure that's done correctly. Little things like that can make all the difference in the world. You guys are familiar. Stucco is the S word in the real estate, industry right now. Personally, I'm of the opinion that the stucco issues that are out there are being a little bit blown out of proportion. We do more stucco inspections than anybody on the East Coast. And what we see on a day-to-day basis is that it's not quite as bad as it's being purported to be. You type in stucco problems, you're going to see the worst of the worst, right? So that's just the way it is. But in reality, what we see, we're not seeing the systemic failures where it's just a complete tear-off. The fact, though, is that all of these things could have been avoided if code enforcement incorporated these things into their process, which now we're just now starting to see that. Within the past, 5-7 years, we're starting to see municipalities starting to incorporate, the building envelope inspection into the process. But that's why we recommend, doing a home inspection or on a new construction. Because there is, even though it's a brand new home, people think, I have a brand new home that's being built, I'm not going to have any problems with it. No, that's not the reality of it. And so just having an extra set of eyes is a really, really good idea. Do we get pushback from the builders? And we actually don't. Every once in a while we'll get, they usually make us take a couple extra steps. Just before the class today, we had to sign a release for them, and we also provide them with a COI naming them as additionally insured, a certificate of insurance. But as far as, what we get in terms of, they allow us on site. They might ask us to wear a hard hat, a couple of different things that we might not normally do. But what we see, normally the person we're talking to is the project manager. And when it comes to new construction, if you've got a really good project manager, you're typically going to get an end result. But a lot of times what we see is these project managers really get stretched. And so it's really hard for them to be able to keep a close eye on everything. Another good reason to get the new construction inspection from a home inspector. But they really do take our feedback. We run into some things where, there for a while we were seeing that they were using some new technology, easy bead technology, which is basically a termination bead for reservoir type cladding systems like adhered stone or stucco. And builders didn't understand that they needed to caulk that. They thought that all they needed to do was install this easy bead. Well, over and over again, we were calling this out during inspections, and I would get the feedback from project managers that, man, I really love getting your reports because it really gives us some insight into some things that we're just generally not looking for. And so that's been my experience. It's actually been a very positive experience. You would think that you're going to get pushback, but in general we don't. Most of the time when I've gotten any pushback, it's on a custom home with a builder that builds 1 or 2 homes at a time, and they're very, very defensive about their product. But usually by the time and they usually follow us around during the inspection, but usually they come around and we're usually pretty good friends. They realize that we're really on their same side. We just want to see them deliver a product that's going to be, it's everything we do. All of us here on this call, everything we do is about creating a great user experience for our clients, and the builder's no different. So when they realize that we're all on the same team, they usually have no problem whatsoever.
Thank you, Pete. Kathy, during the appraisal process, how does the list price and contract sales price go into your appraised value?
It's funny you asked me that because I was reading the question and someone, another realtor called me up and said, we're in a bright, Zoom meeting, and they're telling us that we're not allowed to change the asking price upward to keep the, the escalated sales price. And I didn't realize they weren't allowed to change it, but I always do my research and see the history and how the house was listed at one price and sold for another price. And if they've changed it after it got on the market, would it go up or down? And I have to report those findings. But I did not know that Bright does not, you're not allowed to change the list price upward to meet the escalated sale price. And I think that's a good idea because what we're getting now is skewed data that isn't reporting that a lot of houses are selling for above asking price because they changed the asking price to meet the escalated sales price. So when that data is then mined, we're not seeing that it's sold 105% over asking price. We're seeing that it's sold 100% of asking price. So it does make it just from where you start and then, how well it was received in the market. Was the house on the market for 5 days, 30 days, 100 days? Was the asking price adjusted multiple times? It does kind of tell its own story. So the listing price does it's something I look at, but I look at the history in general and I report it back.
Thank you, Kathy. And next question goes to Monica. And what trends are you seeing recently with buyers and sellers?
Buyers are beginning to be able to catch their breath. We're starting to see an edge of that. Whereas before I would show the house and I would have to say, I know you just saw it here, sign your offer. Now they actually might be able to bring mom or dad or heaven forbid their spouse who wasn't able to attend the first showing with them to go see what it is they're making an offer on. So I am starting to see that change a bit. And back to what Kathy was saying, I know we only have like 2 minutes left. With this changing the price, and then Denise Gaines asked, should lenders advise agent not to change the price to an escalated price? There's a couple questions that are left there. I don't know if we're going to follow up on anything after we end this up today, but knowing what Kathy is saying about don't push the value up to match or to show like an increase in that, we really are undermining our appraisal situation by pushing those numbers. And I have done it. I had pushed early on, but I'm not doing it anymore. So.
Thank you, Monica. And I'm not sure what happens when this buzzer gets to zero, if it's like an episode of 24 or what, but just want to say thank you to all of our panelists for participating and try to get you all an equal number of questions. I've been keeping track of what's coming from the audience here, and thanks for letting me join the party, and it's my pleasure to be here.
And I would recommend reach out to these other panelists for additional information. We have 5 great experts on here. Not talking about me, I'm talking about the others. So 5 great experts, reach out to people with questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Pleasure, guys.
See you, Brian.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for having me.
And Kathy, you could just push that exit button. I think it'll let you out that way. Thank you all. Try to see if we can do any follow-up. If there's any additional questions that you have, I don't know how the chat's being recorded, but we'll see if we can do something with follow-up to get additional information to anybody that needs it. Great questions. Thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of the conference. And make sure you attend the meeting on Thursday and Friday is our vote. Thank you, guys.